I'll remove a few things off the screen then. Okay, and get started. Okay, so you can see on the screen we have SchoolConnects in the background. Now, I can't use the same procedure that you use to log in. We've employed what's called a single sign-on system with Central Okanagan. What that means is that you'll be using the same username and password that you use to log into your computers when you start off in the morning. So when you're logging on to the Central Okanagan network, you'll be using those same credentials when you go into SchoolConnects. You'll be using the URL that you see on the basic training guide here. I'm pointing it out right now. Type that into your web browser, Internet Explorer, Firefox, or Chrome. Chrome is actually preferable. We find it to be the most responsive and best to use with our system. Type it in there, save it as a bookmark or a favorite, and then you'll have quick and easy access to it from that point on. When you execute it, you will get a screen that's different from the one that you see here. It'll prompt you for authentication, your username and password. You'll be using the same username and password that you use to log on to your computers at the office. Once you're in, this is the page that will come up, and we'll discuss all the options that you see in this page. I do want to alert you to the fact that we have a basic training guide. I'm showing it to you on the screen now. It's in the foreground. This is a document that you can refer to on a day-to-day basis. It'll guide you through virtually all the activities that you'll ever need to access within SchoolConnects. It's 45 pages long. It's not all about using the system. We do have some additional pieces of information there. If you need to send a file to us, we need you to encrypt it, for example, so that if it falls into the wrong hands, they won't be able to access the data in it, student information, phone numbers, emails, etc. So we have a whole procedure and protocol that's involved in transferring files to us if you ever need to do that. So that's covered in this basic training guide as well. So don't let that number 45 be intimidating. You're not going to have to study a big, long, heavy-duty document to actually run the system. You'll find that after today's session, you should find it's quite easy to sort of maneuver within it and get the tasks that it's asking you to perform done quite easily. Okay. The other document that we're preparing for you, I think we're going to be making slight modifications to it. Let me just remove the sidebar there. It's a quick reference guide on how to send an announcement, okay, and how to get an attendance message out. So this is a very simplified sort of quick reference. Okay, it doesn't give you all the options, doesn't give you all the details that you actually have access to. But to simply get an announcement out or to simply get your attendance message out, these are very quick and easy steps that you can follow. So you'll have access to both documents. You'll also have access to the recording of this webinar that we're making today. And finally, you'll have access to our master manual as well. It's a very, very big document. It covers SchoolConnects in its entirety. There's not anything in SchoolConnects that isn't covered there in detail. So you can always refer to the appropriate resource to locate whatever information you need. And finally, you can always call us. We have an 800 number that you'll be provided with. You can call us, talk to our tech support people. They'll be glad to help you as well. Okay, so let's remove the documents here off the screen momentarily, and what we'll do is we'll get started then. So once you log on to SchoolConnects, this is the screen that will come up. Okay, it's divided into two broad areas. On the left side, we have what we call the navigation pane, which is basically a menuing system, and in the much larger area screen is what we call the work area, which is where you actually do your work. Okay. Now, you can see that we have various types of messages, so let me just give you sort of an overview of what you're actually seeing here. The school that I chose as our prototypical school for today is Okanagan Mission Secondary. They're one of the schools that are in this training session, okay, and they have the honor of actually being the prototype that we've chosen for the training session. Okay, so if you look at what we have here, you can see that we have 3 items where it says announcement, create your own message, commercial announcement, again, create your own message, and emergency, create your own message. In all 3 of these instances, you'll actually be recording the telephone component that you wish to send out, and you'll also be keying in the text for the remaining components. You have the option of actually sending out calls, emails, SMS messages to people who are set up to receive SMS messages on a cell phone. And you can also send out Twitter tweets. Okay, what we're going to concentrate on today is getting calls out and show you some of the other features, and those will be implemented sometime in the future as you get a little more familiar with the system. But we'll sort of give you an overview of all those features, with the exception of the Twitter tweets, because we don't have an account set up at Okanagan Mission for that purpose. But again, you know, if that's something that you want to set up, if you have a school Twitter account and you want to use it in conjunction with SchoolConnects to be able to send out tweets from SchoolConnects, it's very easy to link that Twitter account to SchoolConnects, and we have you know, very thorough documentation on how that's to be done. Okay, so like I said, so we have 3 of these items here where it says create your own message. We have a couple additional items here as well. Announcement reuse message and announcement use a can message. Use a can message you know, provides you with various stock messages that come with SchoolConnect. So you can see these are you know, various school-related messages, you know, overdue library items, for example. If you want to send out a generic message without having to record it, without having to enter any kind of text, you're using something that already exists. All you'd need is a list of students, for example, who have overdue library items. You can obtain that from the school librarian. All the school librarian would need to prepare for you would be the student IDs for the students who have overdue library items. You then pick the date and time, use that file to send out that information, and a very quick and easy way of setting up that message, and simply send it out. Okay, and you can see there's a variety of other stock messages like that. The other one that we have here, it says announcement reuse message. Now this relates to a general announcement, and for each of these announcements where you can create a message, which would be commercial, emergency, and general announcement, for each of these you can create the message one time and designate it as a reusable message. Okay, and then you'll have a corresponding icon on this screen. So as soon as I go to create an emergency message and I designate it as reusable, I'll have one reusable message which I can then use. A new icon will appear then on the screen to the right, the emergency icon, and it will be a reusable message of the one that I saved when I created it this first time. So in each of these instances where you can create an announcement, you can also designate it as reusable, and a store for reusable messages will be created on the screen, and it will hold all the reusable messages corresponding to that item. Okay, so in this case, in this particular case, the only store of reusable messages that we have corresponds to those which were already created under the general announcement. Okay, now I want to discuss some of the differences between these. So we have 3 items here where it says create your own message. How are they distinct from one another? Okay, well, general announcements and commercial announcements can only go out after 7:30 a.m. or after 9 p.m. Before 9 p.m. If you have an emergency message that has to go out, after 9 p.m. or before 7:30 a.m. or any announcement for that matter, you would have to use this emergency option. Okay. The other difference between them is general announcements and commercial announcements will call back every 30 minutes, up to 5 times by default if a message is not deliverable. You know, the phone line is busy, it'll call back every 30 minutes, or if there's no answer, etc. With emergency announcements, they'll call back every 5 minutes, up to 12 times, with the understanding that if it's an emergency, there's a greater urgency to get a hold of someone, so the interval between callbacks is shortened from 30 minutes to 5 minutes. Okay. And then finally, the difference between general announcements and commercial announcements. Commercial announcements can go out only to those people who've subscribed to receiving commercial announcements in compliance with the anti-spam legislation, the CASL legislation that was passed a couple of years ago, and which will be implemented and enforced sometime next year. Okay. Okay, so let's go in then and go through the process of actually creating an announcement then. So we'll click on this first option. The steps that we go through here apply to all those other announcements where it says create your own announcement. So commercial announcements and emergency announcements, the steps are identical. You have 4 steps and a summary screen that you go through. Okay, now you can only select your own school. I'm currently logged in as a school administrator at Okanagan Mission Secondary, so I can't select another school. The reason this even exists here is if I'm a district administrator, I can send messages to multiple schools or the entire district if I wish, and then and in that case, this pull down then becomes relevant. I would actually see all the schools, and I could then access them. In your own case, if you're set up as a school administrator, you only have access to your own school. The important thing when it comes to this particular first step, probably the most important thing here is to overwrite the default message name. The announcement name here you can see is the name of the person who's logged in. Okay, I'm currently logged in. Announcement for, and then the date. Now, if you save all your messages in this format, how are you going to distinguish one from another if you have to go back through your messages and locate one? You may need to locate it to look at the report for it. You may want to listen to the message, the recording that went out, etc., etc. You can go back up to 999 days within SchoolConnects to locate a message for any one of those purposes. Well, you'll need to have it named properly so that you can identify it. Otherwise, if all your messages sort of look like this and are simply distinguished by dates, you're going to be very hard pressed to locate a message. So let's get rid of that. Let's overwrite it, and we'll go with an example here of a graduation ceremony invitation. Okay, so if I'm using this now, if I need to locate this message sometime in the future, I'll know exactly what it's about. So just try to develop a habit here of overwriting the default announcement name. The language, you'll normally leave this on multi-language unless you actually want to restrict this particular message to a particular language. So, let's say this is a message that you want to go out only to Mandarin-speaking homes. Okay, you would select Mandarin here, and it would not go out to anyone else but those people whose language spoken in the home is Mandarin. Normally, you'll leave this on multi-language. In 99.999% of the time, that's exactly where it stays. Okay. You saw in the last screen that we had stores where reusable messages are held, where they can be accessed. If this is a message that I'm creating this one time and designating as reusable, I would check the Make Message Reusable checkbox here, and it would become available to me in one of those stores, in the store that corresponds to general announcements, where I can then easily retrieve it and deploy it. Okay. Now, you might be wondering, is graduation ceremony a good candidate for a reusable message? And right off the top, I'll tell you, it is not. Okay, you can, from one year to the next, you'll be sending out graduation invitations, okay, but they'll be unique from one year to the next. The date will be different, the time will be different, perhaps the location will be different, etc. Commencement speakers, and so on. Okay, so it does not qualify as a good candidate for making it reusable. Reusable message would be something where you're sending out, let's say, weekly or monthly reminders. If you had PTA meetings, for instance, on the first Tuesday of every month, and you wanted to remind participants towards the end of the previous month, you could create it this one time. The message itself would always be the same, a reminder concerning next Tuesday's PTA meeting. And you could just deploy it at the end of every month as you see fit. Okay, so that would be a good candidate for a reusable message. So we'll uncheck it here and not apply it in this case. Use school default announcement template settings. You'd only check this off if you were directed to do so by one of our tech support people, in which case we had to set up a special template for your school in opposition to the general district-wide template that's in place now and that you're using by default. So you'd only check this off, in other words, when you're asked to do so by one of our tech support people. So our main concern here then in step one is simply getting the announcement name right, okay? And, if we need to make it reusable, we will do that. Okay. Next step then, we'll click on next, takes us to step 2. You can see that by default, we have call and email checked off as default delivery means. If you wanted this just to go out as a call, you would uncheck email. Okay. If you wanted email, you check it. SMS is another option that you can select as well. Okay. And you can see I've selected all 3 in this case. Okay. Twitter tweet, I'm not going to select here. I could, but I don't have a Twitter account that's associated with Okanagan Mission. So I wouldn't even be able to actually, activate it at this point and deploy it. Okay, so we'll just leave that as it is. I'll just let you know that the text box where I would enter the text for the SMS message is identical for Twitter. Once the account is associated, it's simply a matter of just entering text in a box, okay? So we'll just leave that as it is. The priority field refers to the sequence in which multiple messages are heard. So if you have 3 messages that you've prepared that you want to send out later today, SchoolConnects will not call 3 times. What it'll do is it'll combine all 3 messages on a single call. And if you wish to have this particular message heard ahead of the others, you would designate it with a high priority and designate the other 2 with either a medium or a low priority. If you have a single message going out that day, you can just leave it where it is, and this particular field then is irrelevant. You can set the date. It always defaults to the current date. Whenever you click on a date field in SchoolConnects, you'll get a pop-up calendar like this, which will then allow you to pick an alternative date. So this one is set for today, the 26th. What we're going to do is move it up to the 28th because we don't want anything going out inadvertently. And you can see it's now set to the 28th. Our default call time is 5 p.m. Okay, we can overwrite this simply by clicking on it. Once again, you can see we get these 2 bars, hour and minute. Let's say I want to move this up to 5:30. I can just advance this minute bar. Okay, it's sliding around on me. There we go. Click on OK, and you can see that's changed. Okay, I can change any one of these times. Okay, accordingly in the same way. Okay, so that's step 2. We've chosen our delivery means, set the priority, the date, and the times for the deliveries. When I click Next, it advances me to step 3, starting with the recording center. Okay, so I can enter some text here. Okay, I'll do so now. You can see this is a graduation ceremony invitation message, from the principal, Leanne Zorn. And it goes right down to the end. And what I can do at this point is I can actually have SchoolConnects read what I've entered here and generate a computer voiced message. Okay, so I have my text here. If I click on generate recording from text, go down to English, okay, give it a moment or 2, I get a message that tells me that it's successfully created the recording. When I click on OK, I can now listen to it. So what I'll do is I'll check off the use speakers to play back, and I'll play back that computer-generated recording so you can hear it. So here we go.
Dear parent or guardian of the O'Connell Mission Secondary School student, this is Principal Lenny Zorn calling to invite you to the O'Connell Mission Secondary School graduation ceremony that will take place on June 18th between 3 o'clock and 5 p.m. in the school auditorium.
Okay, I'll just stop it there. Okay, you can see it's a rather gruff voice and maybe even a little intimidating, mechanical. Even the phrasing can be a little difficult to understand. We're using the state-of-the-art technology here, but it's an imperfect technology, and it doesn't mimic a human voice adequately enough, in my opinion. So what you want to do instead is, I think you're much better off to actually record in your own voice, and to do so, you click on the record button. Okay, and then you have some options where you'll have SchoolConnects call you. Now your options are, if you're using a direct line, like a cell phone, direct line at the school, or you're calling from home, for example, you can use this direct connection. Okay, enter the phone number here, and it'll call you, and you can go from there. If you're at a school where all the calls go through a receptionist, so if I'm the principal, for example, in the principal's office at the school, and the calls all go through a receptionist, what I can do is I can enter the base number of the school, enter my own extension in the extension field, and what happens when that call arrives at the school, the receptionist will answer, and he or she will then be asked to transfer the call to the extension that I've provided in this extension field. That would be the principal's office. It will then arrive for me in the principal's office. I'll then make that recording and take over from that point on. If you're at a school where the telephone system can automatically route calls to your extension, once again, you'd enter your base number, you'd enter your own extension, and you'd use the auto attendant option, and it would bypass anyone else and come directly to you. Now, we'll recommend that you actually use a comma in front of your extension. In some cases, it's not necessary, but as a precaution, you might want to just insert a single comma there. What it does is it introduces a 2-second pause. So it separates the base number from the extension. In some cases, some phone systems actually need that. Otherwise, they'll interpret all the numbers that you've entered, the 10 digits for the phone number and however many digits for the extension. It'll look at it as one long number, and what it'll do is it'll only process the first 10 digits as the phone number and just drop the remaining digits, okay? And in which case it won't arrive at your extension. So just insert a single comma there, just ensure that you do get the call at your extension if you're using this auto attendant option. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the direct connection option, and I'm going to use a cell phone and actually do a recording then. Okay, so I'll tell you what's going to happen. I'm going to click on Call Me. SchoolConnects will call me, and the first thing that it'll ask me to do is to click on the Verify button on the screen that will appear on the computer screen. That's to ensure that I'm the intended recipient of the call, so it isn't going out somewhere to the community where some strange person will make some kind of strange recording on my school's behalf. We wouldn't want that to happen. Okay, so once I click on Verify, it'll prompt me then to record a message and to click on Stop when I'm finished. Okay, so I'll click on Call Me here now. The call should come through in a few moments, and we'll do a recording that way.
SchoolConnects Easy Message Manager calling. Please press the Verify button on your screen to enter the recording and playback module. If this number was dialed in error, please hang up. We are sorry for any inconvenience. Thank you.
Okay, so now I'll click on the Verify button.
Please record your message after the tone. When you have finished recording, click Stop.
Dear parent or guardian of an Okanagan Mission Secondary School student, this is Principal Leanne Zorn calling to invite you to the Okanagan Mission Secondary School graduation ceremony that will take place on June 18th between 3 and 5 p.m. in the school auditorium. It is my pleasure to inform you that the commencement speaker this year will be one of our celebrated alumna, Professor Judith Williams, who's achieved international fame for her medical research. Okay, I'll just stop it there. Okay, I clicked on Stop, and what I can do now is I can re-record over it. Let's say I stumbled on a particular word, or there's some background noise, or I'm just generally sort of dissatisfied with my recording. I can re-record over it. I can also play it back now over the speakers, okay, to listen to it. I've checked that off. If I uncheck this box, it'll play it back over the phone. Okay, I'll play it back over the speakers, stream it out to you so you can hear the recording. So here we go.
Dear parent or guardian of an Okanagan Mission Secondary School student, this is Principal Leanne Zorn calling to invite you to the Okanagan Mission Secondary School graduation ceremony that will take place on June 18th between 3 and 5 p.m. in the school auditorium.
Okay, I'll just stop it there. Yeah, you know what the rest is, okay? I think you'll agree that my voice is slightly more pleasant than the computer-generated voice.
Hey, Bronco, can I quickly jump in there?
Sure.
Yeah, so hey guys, it's Jordan Kleckner, and I agree your voice is much nicer than the recording one. I just jumping in, a few people have noted, and I would tend to agree, some people have asked about, would you really send a message this long? And I was saying that, you know, the likely scenarios that you would use this calling feature are, you know, things like an emergency where you maybe want it to go out in multiple forms, or something that's a little more short and sweet. I'd venture to guess that most schools would send a message of this type kind of via email or text.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so yeah, you know, you can judge by your own community school standards, you know, what people are prepared for, and you know, adjust you know, your practices accordingly. Okay. Now, one of the other things that you can do here is you can translate this text into other languages and generate a recording as well. Okay. If you use the translation services, I would strongly urge you to do so with a significant amount of circumspection. The reason for that is that translation services on computers are notoriously inept. There's no other way to put it. And you can actually do things that can be rather untoward. Okay, so for example, the example that we have in our documentation is of a class going on an out-of-town field trip, and a teacher wishes to report back to the students' parents and guardians how things are going, and he uses the expression that they're having a blast. Well, that translates in various languages like Mandarin that they're experiencing an explosion. You know, hardly the type of message that you want parents to get back, okay? So if you use the translation services, do so, you know, very cautiously. Try to be as literal as possible. Don't use expressions like they're having a blast. Use expressions like they're enjoying themselves or something along those lines. Even those are subject to, you know, distortion when you use translation services. You know, it's just computers are very imperfect at translation. Best of all, if you have teachers or staff or someone who can actually do the translation themselves, that's always to be preferred. So what you can do is you can select the language here, okay, let's say Russian or Mandarin or any one of these other languages, and once you select it here, what you can do is you can do a recording in that language. You can do multiple recordings in this way by changing the selection here and you know, creating multiple tracks. Those messages will then be disseminated to the community according to the language field in My EdBC. We pull that field into our SchoolConnects address book database, okay, and that's where we then look up to see what the message or what the language spoken in the home is, and then if you have a language that you've recorded in, okay, that corresponds to it, the message will go to that particular home in the language that's recorded in My EdBC and in the SchoolConnects address book. Okay, and that's probably the best way to deal with multiple languages, to record them yourselves if you have someone who can actually do the translation. Once you have one or more tracks, you've completely recorded everything that you need recorded at this point. If you click on hang up, it'll hang up the phone. Okay, and then you can click on continue. The continue button becomes available to you, and then you can continue on preparing the remaining messages. Now this text here was carried over from the telephone message, so I'm just going to delete that and we'll use different messaging there, okay? So first thing that we want to do then is work on the email. We need a subject, so we'll go with the name of the message, okay, graduation ceremony invitation, and then what we can do is start typing in our message. So dear parent or guardian of, and what I can do at this point is I can actually personalize each outgoing email. So if you're familiar with mail merge concepts in word processing, same type of thing applies here, where you're going to insert a variable or a tag and then have it replaced by the corresponding bit of information. So in this case, I want the student name to appear here. So if I click on tags, okay, I get a whole group of tags that I can choose from. It's the student name that I want. I'll just simply click on it. Click on OK. You can see it's inserted that code now, and what happens is the code will then be replaced by the actual student's name. Now I can go on here and continue typing my message, okay, and it will go out currently as plain text, as you can see. Now if I want to jazz this up a bit, you know, put some graphics in there, you know, change the font and so on and so forth, if I uncheck this box, I get a whole toolbar that appears for me. And what I can do is I can select my text then, I can bold it, I can italicize it, I can change the font size if I wish to. Okay, I can go in and insert a graphic image if I'd like. There's the icon that I would click on. Even multimedia content can be included. So if I click on this option, you can see it's a piece of film strip there, and what I can do is I can insert a film clip or a video clip rather, and even you know, other types of multimedia like a soundtrack. Okay, I can then insert my message. Okay, so I'll do that right now. I'll actually pull it up. You can see a lot of these icons in the toolbar will be familiar to you. You know, there's bullets and numbering, for example, various types of fonts that you can choose from, and you know, various other icons that will be familiar to you. For those that you're not familiar with here, okay, that are unknown to you, what you can do is you can look it up in our documentation and then figure out if they're useful to you. So there's our message. We have it in its entirety, okay, signed off by the principal at Okanagan Mission. Now, if I go down here and I enter a web address, okay, so there's the Okanagan Mission Secondary School web address. As soon as I hit the space bar, what happens is SchoolConnects recognizes that that's a web address, and what it does is it converts it into a live link. So when this message then goes to the homes of students, and the parents and guardians get it, when they click on this link, it'll take them directly to the Okanagan Mission Secondary School home page. Okay, any page on the World Wide Web can be referenced this way. So if you have, let's say, certain types of information that parents need to know about, let's say from the BC Ministry of Health concerning viruses and vaccines and things like that, things that you want them to know about, you can put a web address in there. They can click on it. It'll take them directly to that page, etc. Any page on the World Wide Web can be referenced that way. Email addresses as well can be entered. Okay, you'll see when I hit the space bar now, immediately it converts it into a live link. When parents and guardians now get this message, when they click on this link, it'll open up their email software, and this will be the default recipient that they'll be responding to. You can have as many of either of these types of links in a document. Okay. Next, we'll move on to creating the SMS message. You can see it's limited to 140 characters, so you want to keep this as brief as possible, and something like this would probably be adequate. Okanagan Mission Secondary School graduation ceremony takes place on June 18th. See email or school website, and it has the website here for details. Now, when this arrives on the SMS screens on subscribers' cell phones, this particular address here will be a link. Okay, so when it comes on their screen, they can simply tap on that link, and what it'll do is it'll open up the Okanagan Mission Secondary School homepage on their screen, and then they can go through there and read all about the graduation ceremony. You want to keep the SMS message as brief as possible. No one likes long SMS messages. This gets the whole point across. So, setting up your messages to be as brief and concise as possible is a good best practice. And you can see this is a good example of that. Okay. Okay, I'm getting a question. Are the cell phone numbers pulled from my ed, or do users subscribe? Okay, well, I'll deal with that shortly. They have to actually subscribe, okay? You can't send SMS messages to just anyone. They have to actually subscribe. And there's a couple different means that can be used to effect that subscription. And when we get along a little further in the discussion, we'll go to the Manage Contacts section of SchoolConnects, the address book, and I'll discuss those features with you. But that's a very good question. Thank you. Okay, so we have our SMS message here. We have our email message. We've recorded our telephone component. At this point, we'll click Next. It advances us to the fourth and final step. This then is where we choose our recipients and do some fine-tuning in terms of how they're contacted. Okay, so you can see that you have options here. You can import a file which completely bypasses MyEdBC, bypasses SchoolConnects entirely, and you could have contact information for various types of individuals in an external file. Okay, so you're not confined in any way as to who you send messages to and how. Okay, in this case, we're going to be using the address book because it affects students, and that's where we'll locate the students in the SchoolConnects address book. This address book is updated from information in MyEdBC. It occurs overnight, every night. Any information that's entered in MyEdBC today will appear in the SchoolConnects address book tomorrow. Okay, and we'll be looking and discussing the address book a little later on. The contact list, okay, we'll be looking at that as well. A contact list is basically a distribution list. You can have a single contact list for every type of group within the school. So if you have certain athletic groups, basketball teams, volleyball teams, other types of non-athletic groups, certain types of clubs, drama club, stamp collecting club, whatever it is you have, okay? You can have a contact list that corresponds to each of those. You can also have external contact lists, and we'll be discussing that. And you have the option of using one or more contact lists if you select it here. Finally, you can use the address book and one or more contact lists in tandem. Okay, so let's go back to the address book. That's what we want to use because we're dealing with students. And you can see that the entire school population is now pre-selected. Well, of course, not everyone is graduating, right? So what we want to do is we want to pare it down to those instances in which people are graduating. So if I click on the address book button, okay, and click on select subset or individuals, you can see I have categories that I can choose recipients from, or I can select individuals from a cross-section of different categories. So this is an entire category that I want to choose. The category that's pre-selected here is grade, which is exactly what I want. You can see the various grades here, and it's a senior grade that I want to select, grade 12. They are the graduating grade, the senior grade. I can check it off. It's selected the entire grade. When I click on continue, you can see it's pared it down to the 223 students in grade 12. Okay, so I have my recipients now, and now I can go ahead and fine-tune how they're going to be contacted. So right now, the home phone number of the primary residence of the student will be called, and that's the only one that's checked. That's a primary residence of the student, the custodial parent, if the parents are separated or divorced. Now, let's say you want to invite both parents. You know, they're separated, they're divorced, they have, you know, distinct home phone numbers. So what we want to do is we want to invite that non-custodial parent as well. So I'll need to check off relatives, and I want to check off the home phone number there as well. Now, I'm not going to check off mobile numbers or alternative numbers, not for a message like this, a graduation ceremony message. But let's say, you know, this was an emergency message going out. You know, let's say you had a gas leak in the school is evacuated, it's a cold winter day, and you need parents to respond as soon as possible. Well, in that case, what you'll want to do is you want to check off all these numbers, okay, and try to reach parents wherever you can. For graduation ceremony, home number is sufficient. The SMS numbers are all pre-selected, and the email addresses are all pre-selected. Now, there's one final thing that we need to do here. We don't want to include, you know, non-parents, aunts and uncles and babysitters and nannies and grandparents and so on, okay? So you can see that we have a priority range here from 01 to 03, okay? What we want to do is we want to limit it to parents only. So what we'll do is we'll modify this from 01 to 02, and that will only encompass parents, okay? Okay, so I have a question. Does relative simply mean other parent, regular contact? Relative actually means any contact. Any contact. So you could have, a nanny or a babysitter, for example, set up as a contact. Hopefully, it'll be set up as priority 3 in that case. So if the non-parental contacts are set up with a priority number of 03 or higher, they will be excluded. So you can see that I've included only priorities 01 and 02, which encompasses parents only. Okay, and any other priorities will be excluded, and that's the purpose of having this priority range. It allows you to exclude certain people and to include others. Now, if this was an open house, for example, or a school fair or something along those lines, you wouldn't want to put any kind of restriction. You want to try to invite as many people as you can. Okay, so your priority range then, could go from 01 to whatever, to 99. Anything along those lines. In our case, though, we want parents only, and that's 01 and 02 only. Okay, so we've chosen our recipients. We've fine-tuned how they're going to be called. At this point, when I click on Next, it takes me to a summary screen. Okay, and you can see I can now review my settings. So, there's the name of my announcement, the date that it's slated to go out on. There's the call time. I'm looking at my email message here with all the formatting codes in it. As I scroll down, you can see all the various settings that are in play for this particular message. Grade 12 was my selection criterion. It comprises 223 students. Now, if there's anything I've missed or anything I need to change, I can go back through the steps and make that change. So, for example, if I had an email attachment that I needed to include, I forgot to. It's a common oversight. You can see that I don't have an email attachment. I have an X there. And what I can do now is I can go back to the step in which I created the email, which is step 3, and make that correction. So you can see I have no attachment. If I click on Add, I can now choose a file for my attachment. I'll grab something here that I can use, a nice short little file. That's a help file for a little program. I'll click on OK, click on Upload. Okay, and you can see just that easily it's been added. I can add as many files as I wish to, provided that collectively they don't exceed 6 megabytes, which is quite big actually. Okay, any other changes that I need to make, I can go back through these steps. You know, if I need to schedule it for a different date, I can do so, etc. When I come back to the summary screen, I should see all those changes affected. So you can see where I had a red X over here, I have now a check mark for the email attachment. There's a name of the attachment. If I had multiple attachments, they would all appear here. And if everything's good to go at this point, once I click on Finish, I'll be taking this from a message being in a state of preparation to a live scheduled message on a production server at Synervoice. So let's do that then. We'll click on Finish. Okay, this basically tells me it's setting it up on the server. When I click on Close, it takes me to the date that the message was created for. I have some summary information across the screen here, and you can see I have a group of icons which now allow me to get into this message, to modify it, and to review it as I see fit. Now, if any part of this message was actually delivered, let's say even a single email went out or a single call was made, you cannot modify the message and you cannot delete it, okay? It becomes part of the notification history of the school. In this case, I can modify it. Nothing's been sent out, so I can modify it. Now, you'll notice that I have 4 icons here. This is a consistent interface feature throughout SchoolConnects, whether you're looking at the address book, student records, contact lists, messages themselves, etc., etc. Anytime you have an item that can be reviewed or edited, you'll have 1 or more icons in the icon column which allow you to do that. So in this case, I can modify this. Like I said, if I click on this first icon, View or Edit Message Settings, it allows me to go in here. It shows me some basic summary information up top, as you can see, and I have a group of tabs now which will allow me to make those modifications. So if I want to reschedule this for a different date, I can click on the date field, choose an alternative date. I can set a different priority if I wish to, and I can limit it to a particular language if I wish to. My time settings, you'll recall that this was originally 5 p.m. I advanced it to 5:30. Let's say I changed my mind. Okay, what I can do then is move it back to 5, click on OK, and you can see that takes hold. Okay, any one of these other times can be changed in exactly the same manner. The messages themselves.
Can we just, now that you're on this page, someone brought up a good question that I'm curious about myself. So if you were to go to the call settings tab there.
Yes.
Well, I guess what we're looking for is the contacts that get contacted. Would that be under call confirmation?
No, that's in the second icon. So this is the first icon where we're actually modifying some of the settings or the messages themselves. We can then look at the recipient list in the next icon.
Yeah, so what we're wondering is when it lists there that it would say student, primary, and the other says relative, we're just curious what those are tied to. We just want to confirm. Right,
so the student is the student household, okay? So the telephone number at the student household, it's a primary residence of the student, the custodial parents' phone number in cases where there's separation between the parents. Relatives would be any of the contacts that you have in MyEdBC. So it'd be the non-custodial parent, for example. You could have a grandparent who's also a relative, or anyone else. We're actually pulling 3 contacts in the contacts database. Okay, so we'll look at that shortly when we examine the address book, which we'll turn to a little later. And you'll see which information is actually being pulled from MyEdBC and how it translates into the recipient list here in SchoolConnects. In this case, what we've done is we've used those 2 priorities, O1 and O2, which then translates into the 2 parents. Again, pulled from MyEdBC, and it's using the contact information that we have from MyEdBC, which populates the address book in SchoolConnects. Okay. Okay, so we can go in here now and modify these messages. You can see that's the 3rd tab. So if I click on Modify Recording, okay, the recording center comes up. I can go in and re-record the message. I can play it back. I can append to it and go through the entire process of making adjustments to my recording until I have something I'm satisfied with. I can also use this pull down here to record in another language. If I, for example, forgot to record in Russian and I actually wanted a message to go out to Russian speaking homes, I would have to record it then, and I can do so now after the fact, okay? Once you're finished with one or more recordings or modifying your initial English recording, simply click on continue. It'll close this window, and then you can move on to making modifications to the other messages as well. It seems to be something that's where I get a bit of a delay here for some reason. I'll have to let our developers know about it. So I'll just keep clicking on continue here. Give it a moment or two. Or 3 or 4. Wow, that really is taking quite a long time.
So I'll just jump in here again, Bronco. I think
Sure.
I was just going to share. I know a few people have kind of passed along messages. Just that for the most part, I believe that most people won't be using the call out feature that much. It will mainly be email and text. I think that people are interested in, and then using the attendance call out feature after that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I'm not sure why this isn't closing for me. Okay, let's just give it a moment. So we're back recording. Okay, and so what I can do now is go in and modify my email message if I wish to. I can modify my SMS message as well. Okay, call settings. These are settings that are stored in the template for general announcements. You can see that when SchoolConnects encounters a busy signal, it'll call back every 15 minutes. If it encounters no answer, the phone rings, neither person answering machine or voicemail picks up, it'll call back in 30 minutes. It'll let the phone ring up to 6 times, okay? But that can be changed as well. Let's say you want to change that to 4 times, you can, okay? It'll make up to 5 attempts. So the call cycle in this case by default is 30 minutes, 5 attempts for 2.5 hours. Let's say you want to extend it to 3 hours. Well, what you can do then is change that to a 6, and you've just extended it to 3 hours. When SchoolConnects encounters an answering machine, it'll actually play the message twice. The reason for that is that answering machines sometimes have a tendency of cutting off messages. So to ensure that it's heard in its entirety, we play it twice. If SchoolConnects detects that a person has answered the phone, SchoolConnects will only play it the 1 time, okay, and not twice, like with answering machines. Okay, call confirmation. You can set up a call confirmation. You'd want to do this if you had a message that it was imperative that you knew that parents actually got the call. So, if you have something, for example, that has to do with health, let's say vaccines and viruses, and I'm not sure, what the policy in BC is, but in Ontario, kids have to have up-to-date immunization records, and they can be deprived from re-entering the school if, in fact, they don't have that up-to-date immunization record. So if you're sending a notification out to parents advising them that that's school policy, you want to know that they got the message. So what you can do then is you can set up a call confirmation. In this case, you could set it up so that you get a 1-key confirmation. So at the end of the message, SchoolConnects will ask them to press 2 on their telephone handset to confirm that they've gotten the message. Okay, so we'll move along then, and at this point we've made our changes. We'll click on Save. Okay, and any changes that we've made at this point will be reflected. Oh, I forgot to actually change the call time. So you recall that I rolled that back to 5 before our system gave up on us. So any changes that you make will become effective immediately. Okay, so we've looked at the first icon. If I click on the next icon, View or Edit List Details, you can see once again I get some summary information up top. These are the headings that will appear in my listing, and it'll be sorted by name, although you can see I have other options. So if I click on View List, This shows me the list of all the people who are slated to receive this message. Okay, so you can see that I have 262 items on the call list where the calls are yet to go out. Okay, there's the call list. You can see we have a tab for each one of the delivery means. The calls are slated to go out. They haven't gone out. And if I collapse this group of 262, you can see that I have 367 duplicates. Now, the duplicates here refer to the two parents who live together. Okay, they'll have the same home phone number, so only a single call will go to that particular phone number. SchoolConnects will not call twice, even though there are two distinct items on the call list. We have both parents that we've selected. They're both on the call list. Those are distinct items on the notification list, but where there's a duplicate phone number, only a single call will go. So if you look up here, you can see we have 629 items on the call list, only 267 items calls will go out. If you add these two numbers together, you'll get that total there. Okay, and you can see we don't have any other subclassification. Now, if you wanted to revisit a message, let's say you had something that went out 5 months ago, you can actually choose the date, okay, in the calendar. Click on sample call, choose any one of the items, click on sample call, and SchoolConnects will allow you to listen to a message that went out a year ago, for example. Okay. Okay, finally, one of the items that we need to look at a little closer here is the next one, viewer reports. Now, these are the reports that correspond to all the messages that go out from SchoolConnects. So for this particular message, for those of you who are designated as overseers of the system in your office, you'll be getting these reports on a day-to-day basis, okay? And what you'll need to do is you'll need to review these reports. You can also get the report here from SchoolConnects itself. So if I click on Get Reports, okay, you can see it puts a link on the screen for me. When I click on this link, oh, okay, it's still generating it. Okay, I'll take a moment or two. There we go. You can see when I click on the link, I get very little information because I have 786 items where there's no contact made. Okay, so because this notification task wasn't executed, no calls were made, no emails were sent out, I don't have really any useful information here. But let me pull up an example of a report so that we can discuss the content of a report for a message that had actually gone out. So this is one that went out, I'm not sure where the school was, but you can see that we had 1,278 items on the notification list, okay, and we have a pie chart on the left, which gives me proportions of the outcome, the contacts in this 1,278 items on the notification list. So of those, you can see we have 149 where no contact was actually made. We have 975 where contact was made by phone, and you can see we have a variety of other outcomes there as well. Okay, and I'm going to enlarge that a bit. On the right side, you can see that we have various outcomes here, and that we have a pie chart that shows the proportionality of those outcomes. Now, of this 1,278 items on the notification list, you can see that we have 4 instances in which throughout the call cycle of 2.5 hours, the phone number was busy throughout that call cycle. So the message was therefore undelivered, okay? And they're going to appear under this heading in the report. We have 60 instances in which there's no answer, neither a person, answering machine, or voicemail picked up, 60 instances like that, and so on. As you go down the list here, you can see that there are all kinds of explanations, and those explanations then are recorded in the status column of the report. So when you get the reports on a day-to-day basis, if you're the attendance secretary or the office administrator, you'll be getting these reports, and you'll need to know how to respond to them. You'll open up these reports in your email. You'll be looking at this heading here where it says not contacted at all. If there's no contact made, you need to follow up manually. Okay, and how are you going to follow up manually? Well, that depends on why they weren't contacted. So if you have no answer, for example, that means that no one was there to answer the phone. Maybe when you try today, this morning or next morning, you'll get an answer. If you have an invalid phone number, that means that you may be missing a digit, for example, when the phone number was entered in My EdVC, and followed through in the address book in SchoolConnects. You'll then have to go there and then correct that. Okay, you can see there's a whole variety of different statuses that appear here, and in fact, we're showing a very, very small proportion of actual statuses. Carrier rejected, what does that mean? Or filtered by ID, what does that mean? Well, you know, it's not obvious, like no answer. So what we have in the basic training guide, I'll just pull that back up. Okay, if you go to the section in the basic training guide, I'll just enlarge this. Right near the end where it says report statuses, you can see we have statuses for telephone calls, email messages, and SMS messages. If you click on telephone calls, you can see these are all the various statuses that can appear in that status column and explanations for them. So you saw, for example, we had filtered by ID. Well, what does that mean? It means that they're not called because the student ID is on a do not call list. So the parent made a request that they don't wish to get called. We have a do not call list where that number can be entered, okay, and that's why it's being filtered out by ID. Okay, if you go further down, the one of the other things that we saw in the report right here, okay, is carrier rejected. Wow, what could that possibly mean? Well, if you look it up here, carrier rejected, the explanation is that the local telephone carrier was unable to deliver the call. The number may be out of service, call blocking may be turned on, or all carrier circuits may be temporarily busy. Okay, so when you see this, then you know, this means that the telephone company could not process the call. So, you know, what's the reason for that? Well, one of these reasons may be in play. Now, if you see carrier rejected for a phone number, let's say 2-3 days in a row, there could be some kind of significant problem, you know, with the telephone line. But it could be just a temporary thing. The call couldn't be made for whatever reason. You know, maybe there was some kind of repair work being done in the area by the phone company. Next day, you should be fine, and the call will go through. Okay, so as you get these reports on a day-to-day basis, you'll need to look at this heading where it says not contacted at all. You'll be looking at the status column to determine why contact wasn't made, okay, and then follow up manually. And that's an important part of your responsibility if you're, let's say, an attendance secretary or an office administrator who needs to follow up with this information to update your records in MyEdBC, okay? Any questions, by the way, anyone on the reports? You can unmute your mic and please ask questions if there are any. I prefer to hear you speak rather than you know, monitoring a chat window over here. It's a little difficult for me to do. Anyone who wishes to unmute your mic, what you can simply do is click on the microphone icon and they'll remove the slash and we'll hear from you then. Okay, no questions? Okay, well, I guess I'm being a little more thorough than I thought I might be.
I'll quickly jump in there, Branko. I know that some people won't be able to stick around too much longer. I'm just hearing a few people. So wondering if we could go over the quick attendance piece pretty quick here so that they can at least catch that before they have to go.
Okay, sure. Okay, so I'll close this report then. Okay, and one of the reports that you'll be getting on a day-to-day basis will be that attendance report. So now we want to discuss how you create and launch an attendance task. Okay, so to do that, once again, let me just delete this message. We don't want it going out inadvertently. So I'll just delete it. Otherwise, it will go out this Friday, and I'd say that's a little premature for a graduation ceremony. Okay, so let's go in then and discuss how you create and launch an attendance message. So you'll go to send message, okay, and you can see we have attendance messages. The option that you'll be using here will be quick attendance. Now, the thing that you'll need to do, let me just bring up the documents here. In your quick reference guide, you'll need to go, it's a two-step process that you'll have to go through to generate a message. So I'm just going to enlarge this so we can just deal with the attendance message. You'll have to go into MyEdBC and you'll be creating a file from MyEdBC with attendance information in it, okay? It's called an attendance data extract file. There's a different procedure that's involved in elementary schools and a different one in secondary schools. In this particular single-page document, you can see it tells you where you need to click and so on and so forth. In the basic training guide, we actually have screenshots, so you'll see the screenshots that correspond to exactly what you'll see in my EdBC. So it's a little more thorough, okay? But basically, all the information that you need is here. You click on reports, you click on quick report, and so on and so forth. For elementary schools, there's one procedure. There's a very distinct and different procedure that's involved for secondary schools. So you'll have to apply that appropriately. Okay, so once you've created that file in my EdBC, let's say you put it on your desktop, you have that file, your next step then is to create the attendance notification task in SchoolConnects. And once again, you have a different template that you'll be using, whether you're at an elementary school or a secondary school. So I'll pick it up from this point. Let's say we do have that attendance data extract file from my EdBC. Let's say it's sitting on my desktop. What you'll do at that point is you'll go into send message, you'll click on quick attendance, okay? And if you're an elementary school, you'll be using the safe arrival AM absence message. You'll see that your calls will go out sometime after 8 a.m., okay? And you'll be choosing the file that you generated from my EdBC by clicking on the choose file button here. So you'll click there, okay? Let's say you have that file, on your desktop. You would then choose that file, you click on it, you click on open, and what will happen is the file name will appear here next to the choose file button, okay? So you'll see the file name there. What you'll need to do is you'll need to ensure that your start date is the current date. Now you can see that what SchoolConnects did in this case is it's actually using the last date that was used in the system. So I created the announcement for October 28th, which is this Friday, okay? I don't want to use that date if I have an attendance message going out later today. So I need to change this to the current date. So you can see I'll go down to the 26th, which is the current date, and you'll always want to ensure that that date is the correct one. Okay, the call times, okay, will be set up appropriately here. They're actually saved in the template. So if you're an elementary school, your calls will go out after 8 a.m. If you're a secondary school, you'll be using this other template, absence message, period attendance, okay? And you'll see when I click here that my settings have all changed. So the call times, the message notification times are set to 5 p.m. It's not the 8 a.m. morning time that's set for the elementary schools. These are calls that will go out at 5 p.m. And they'll notify parents of periods that were missed. Period 1, 4, and 5, or whatever the case may be, whatever's been recorded in my EdBC. So again, if you're a secondary school, you'll be using the period attendance. If you're an elementary school, you'll be using the safe arrival AM absence templates, okay? Once you've done that, then chosen the appropriate template, verified that the date and time is correct, simply click on finish. It then generates the task. So SchoolConnects generates a task, and the calls will go out according to the information that appears on the screen. You can always verify if the task has been created. Simply click on attendance in the navigation pane right there, okay? And click on the dates, okay, if it's not the current date, and you'll see the task there, okay? Much the same way that we were looking at the task that I created earlier for the graduation ceremony, okay? It'll be a single line there. If you had multiple attendance messages, for a single day, they will all appear here, okay? Otherwise, the one that you've created with the quick attendance option will appear here. You can then go through those icons if you wanted to look at the list, okay? You have that blue icon that you can click on. You can see details pertaining to the task, who's going to be called, which periods they'll be called about, okay? Let's say it's period 2, 3, and 5, et cetera, et cetera. That information will appear on the screen when you click on that blue icon. Okay.
Yeah, Bronco, can
Yes.
I jump in here? So a few people are asking some good questions here. So for those of you that are familiar, we've been using Center Voice that's kind of end of life on this end, and it hasn't been working very well to try to send out attendance calls at the end of the day. And this system is going to be replacing it for us. So yes, it will be something that will be managed on the school end, but it's a much simpler process than what we were trying to do before. And I see Nina asked a good question, which is something that's come up. It'll also give you the flexibility to push these calls however you'd like. And you can even, I know that Mount Bushry, for example, is entertaining sending this out as a text message instead, or as well potentially, where they might want to do it after the first block to try to capture kids that maybe aren't there. Because a lot of times parents will say, I don't find out till 5 or 6 that my kid wasn't at school. It doesn't really help me during the day. So this will give you some flexibility to do potentially a mid call or a first block call, or you could just still do the one at the very end of the day yourself.
Okay, if and when that happens, we'll have additional templates. So, a different template would have to be defined if you're adding, let's say, SMS messaging. Or if you have a template, if you want messages to go out for high schools for morning attendance, in addition to evening calls for period attendance. Once again, you'd have another template here. So, we can, expand the number of templates, and you'd always have to use the appropriate template for the type of message that you wish to send out. So if you were adding morning attendance for secondary schools, for example, there would be a distinct template that's set up for that purpose, and it would appear here then. Okay, and you'll be notified by the district, by Jordan, and anyone else who's involved if any of those templates have been added and what belongs to those templates. Okay.
Yeah, and for now, one thing we can share is we basically tried to grandfather in the exact same process we've been using. So if you click on select message there, the second template that's listed is actually one for period, and it's set to go out at 5 p.m. and start to make calls out to parents. So if you just want to continue to adopt the process you've been using by just doing end of the day calls, you can basically use template number 2 in this, and that will do it for you.
Right. Okay, so we'll move on then. That covers, sort of the main points of creating an announcement and dealing with the attendance. Next, what I want to do is I want to turn to the manage contacts and discuss some of the items here. So there are a few items here that you won't see. This is my particular setup, which gives me access to all kinds of things that you wouldn't have access to, like email blacklist, for example. But in general, you'll see a lot of these options. You'll see the address book, contact list, and we'll discuss the options that you'll actually see. So let's look at the address book first. If I click on it, okay, you can see that the last time that the address book here was updated was earlier today at 12:12 p.m. Okay, these updates will occur on a day-to-day basis. They'll be completely automatic. Okay, so any information that you enter in My EdBC today will appear in SchoolConnects automatically next day. So you can see that at Okanagan Mission, we have grades 7 through 12. Whenever you have a gray bar like this, it designates either a group or a category within SchoolConnects. If you want to look at the individual membership of a particular grade, simply click on the greater than sign. It'll expand it, and you'll see all the students in alphabetical order in that grade. Now you'll notice that we have 2 icons next to each student name. The first icon, when I hover over it, it says Edit Student. This is student information and student household information. The icon next to it says Edit Student Contacts. Okay, so if I click on this first option, you can see I have the name of the student ID, the grade, the homeroom, the language spoken in the home. So if we have a message that we've created and we have multiple tracks, let's say in English, French, Mandarin, and Punjabi, SchoolConnects will actually look up the information in this language field to decide which of those tracks will be sent out to that particular home. Okay, so this information, again, is pulled in from My EdBC. The language spoken in the home field in My EdBC is the one that is used to fill this information. We can have the teacher field pulled in up to the end of the teacher field. This is all information that's drawn in directly from My EdBC. Beyond that, the fields that you see here are unique to SchoolConnects. So there's no Custom Info 1 or Custom Info 2 field in My EdBC. You can use these in whatever manner you designate sort of useful to yourselves. So if you have busing in the district, for example, and you want to be able to send a notification message to the homes of kids on a particular bus route to notify parents that a bus is running late, or that there's going to be some kind of detour and construction on a particular stretch of road, which will necessitate extra travel time, you can use the information in these fields for that purpose. You can use custom info 1, for example, for incoming bus route, custom info 2 for outgoing bus route. The information that you enter directly here will not be overwritten when the update from MyEdBC occurs, because those fields are not being pulled from MyEdBC. Okay, and you can use them, in whatever manner you designate sort of useful to yourselves. Okay, busing is a good example, and it's often used in that manner. The PIN code field is used where parents don't want messages left on an answering machine. You can enter a PIN code here. SchoolConnects, when it calls, then will prompt for a PIN code if there is a PIN code that's entered here, and will not leave a message until that PIN code is provided. So it can call back any number of times, okay, and will only leave the message when the PIN code is provided. If it's not provided, the message will remain undelivered after the call cycle. The PIN code is then activated, okay, by toggling this from no to yes, and it becomes active at that point. The zapper field is used in cases where people have a zapper device connected to their phone line. These are devices that you can purchase at electronic stores or online, and they're designed to zap calls from telemarketers. Unfortunately, they affect our system as well. Okay, so if someone is not getting calls and they're known to have the zapper device on their phone line, what you need to do is you need to toggle this from no to yes, and then what happens is the function of that zapper device is then circumvented. Okay, so the calls will go through in that case, despite the zapper device. Okay, so that's our general tab. We have a primary tab. You can see that the only information that we're pulling here in this division of the address book is the home phone number of the student. This is the primary resident of the student, the custodial parent, in cases where the parents are separated or divorced. And that's the only contact information that appears in this division of the address book, the student household division. Now, if I go back, okay, and look at the same record for McKenna, if I click on the other icon, Edit Student Contacts, you can see we have much more information here pertaining to student contacts. Okay, so we have the mother, we have the father. Okay, you can see the relationship there, mother and stepfather, and you can see that we have these priorities, priority 1 and 02, and we even have a grandfather as a priority 3. So you remember when we were creating our graduation ceremony invitation, I said that the only thing that we want to do is we want to include parents, whether they're separated or divorced. Okay, and what we'd be doing then is we'll be using priorities 01 and 02. So it's only parents in that case that would have been combined on that particular message. The grandfather, as in this case, would be excluded from that invitation, which is exactly what we wanted. Okay, you can see that we have phone numbers, all 3 phone numbers for each of the contacts, or rather for the mother, and only 2 contact numbers for the stepfather and the grandfather. Now, if I want to look, at greater detail at any one of these records, once again, I have an icon that I can click on. I'll click there, okay, and you can see I have student ID, student name, the name of the mother in this case, the relationship is mother. I can enter a PIN code if it's required, and you can see she has an 01 priority. Now, anyone who has an 01 priority will receive all messages. They cannot be excluded from receiving messages. Anyone with an 02 or higher priority can be excluded. So you saw when we were creating the graduation ceremony message, and I select a range of priorities. I limited it to 01 and 02. Okay, excluding 03 and other priorities. You'll notice that I could have set the priority range from 01 to 01, so I could have excluded 02 as well. 01 cannot be excluded. Anyone with an 01 priority will receive all messages. Okay, so if we look at the primary tab here, then we have a home email address, we have a home phone number. You can see that we have various subscription columns here, and I'll explain all that to you in a moment. We have the various types of messages as well, with checkboxes in them. By default, they're all enabled. Now, what that means is that anytime you have an attendance message that goes out as a call and email, it will be received as such, okay, at both of these delivery means. So they'll get a call and they'll get an email for attendance. But let's say you have a situation where this parent does not wish to receive attendance emails and wishes only to receive calls. What you can do is you can toggle off attendance for email, and her wish will then have been fulfilled. Okay, any one of the message types can be toggled off or on for any one of the delivery means. You'll also notice that we have these subscription settings here. Now, one of the things that we've done with Central Okanagan is we've set it up where parents can actually subscribe to receive certain types of messages. Okay, so they could subscribe to receive email messages, okay, or not, or subscribe not to receive email messages, etc., etc. Same with calls and SMS messages. There's a web page that they can turn to. You know, if you consult our documentation, it tells you all about it. There's a web page that they can turn to, and they can set their own subscription settings. Okay, the district will give you more specific information on it. It's beyond the scope of today's training session to get into the details pertaining to those subscription settings. But you know, at some point, a message will go out to people in the district, advising them of how they can connect to that web page to set their subscriptions. The other thing is that whenever you send an email out, there will be a footer, okay, advising parents that they can change their subscription settings. They can opt in and out of receiving certain types of messages. There will be links in those footers that they can click on, which will then take them to the appropriate location where they can set up their subscription options. Okay, and every email will have that in it, which will allow them to make those changes. Once they do make changes, okay, you know, let's say they decide to unsubscribe from receiving emails, you'll see the status change here. Right now, we have no status because no changes were actually made. Okay, now with SMS messaging, okay, they have to subscribe to receiving SMS messages. We cannot send SMS messages to anyone who has not subscribed. So there's a procedure that's involved. I'm just going to call up the basic training guide here so you can look at that procedure. Where do I have that now? Let me just, somehow I removed my basic training guide here, or put it on the side somewhere. Let me grab that momentarily. Okay, here we go. Okay, so if I go back to the table of contents and you go back to the section that's labeled Text Messaging Special Rules and Procedures, it'll explain to you exactly what parents need to do to activate SMS subscription. Okay, they can do it through our subscription services, or they can do it directly on their phone. Okay, so what they can do is they can go to their phone, the phone that they wish to receive the SMS messages on, and from that phone they would enter a short code in place of the phone number. The short code for Center Voice is 56360. They would simply type in the word join, okay, send that request on to us. Our servers would intercept that request, and if the phone number that you're texting from appears in the SchoolConnects address books or in a contact list, they'll be opted in. They'll receive a confirmation message that they've been opted in, and from that point on, whenever you send a message, I'm not sure what's going on here. Well, whenever you send a message, what will happen is they'll receive the SMS message. Okay, let me just go back to where we were here, if I can remember even. Okay, I'm not sure why I got kicked out here. Whoops. Okay, let me go back. So it's Central Okanagan. I apologize for that. I'm not sure why that's going on.
And Bronco, I'll just quickly jump in there. I know few people have asked about this. It is something you could list on your website if you want to promote people going to that to subscribe. But also in every email that goes out, we'll have a footer that has the option to subscribe to text messages. So every email will have at the very bottom both a little one sentencer that basically promotes, hey, sign up here for text reminders, another sentence that says click here to manage your subscription. So if they ever wanted to unsubscribe from anything, they could also click that link.
Right. Mm-hmm. Okay, and once their subscription settings are changed, for example, subscribed SMS, it'll say opted in at that point. Okay, and there'll be a checkbox under the SMS checkbox. Okay, secondary tab as well. You can see we have mobile phone number, an alternative phone number, and extension. These can be workplace phone numbers and extension. All the same items appear in the line for each one of these delivery means, the subscription status, the various messages which can be toggled off and on. So for each contact, you can have up to 3 telephone numbers, a home phone number, mobile phone number, and an alternative phone number, usually workplace number with extension, and you can have a primary email address and an alternative email address. So 3 phone numbers and 2 email addresses for each contact. Okay, so we looked at the mother's contact here. You can see we can access any one of the other contacts, and the way we're set up with Central Okanagan, and we can have up to 3 contacts that are being pulled into SchoolConnects. Okay, so that was the address book. One other thing that I want to alert you to is since the address book is updated overnight, if you have changes that need to go in there today for a message that's going out later today. So for example, you just received word that the phone number that you had for a particular student was incorrect. They're now providing you with correct information, and you want a message to go out later today. They're included in the recipient list. Well, of course, any change that you make in My EdBC today will only appear in the SchoolConnects address book tomorrow. So if you want that message to be delivered to that now new phone number that you've been alerted to, you'll have to make the change both in SchoolConnects and in My EdBC. Otherwise, if there's no message going out later today, that new phone number will now be updated overnight, and you're good to go at that point. Okay, so we're looking at the address book. Next, we'll look at contact lists. Contact list is basically a distribution list. It can include students, but you're not limited to students. So if I click on New here, and I click on the import source, I can use the address book for, let's say, various athletic teams at the school or various clubs. And if I need to send a notification message, to the home of kids, let's say, on the boys soccer team, I can use this contact list for that purpose. I can have a contact list that corresponds to each of the groups whose parents I want to reach within the school. I'm not confined to the school population, though. Okay, I can also create a contact list based on information completely external to My EdBC or external to SchoolConnects. So for example, if I have a group of volunteers, 10 or 12 people that I tap every so often to help out with certain events at the school, like an open house or a school fair or something along those lines, I can maintain their information in an external file, like an Excel file. I can then import that information and send out notification messages, to invite them, for example, to participate in some of those events. As an external file, I need to set up a file specification which instructs SchoolConnects on how to read that external file. So an Excel file, you have a number of different columns in it. How do those each of those columns translate into a field in SchoolConnects? Well, if you set up this file specification, you'll be instructing SchoolConnects on how to read that source file, that Excel file. You'll be matching columns in Excel with fields in the SchoolConnects contact list. It's a very simple sort of process where you're basically clicking on a column and clicking shortly after on the corresponding field in SchoolConnects. It's a very simple sort of click-click process. You can also create a contact list manually, okay, by entering one record at a time. So in our case, what we're going to do is we're going to use the address book as our import source. We're going to go back to the General tab here, and we'll give this a name. We'll use the same example that we used last time, which is the Drama Club. Okay, there we go. It's at Okanagan Mission. I can't even change this actually. And the owner is the person who I'm designating as the one who will be looking after this list. Everyone actually has access to it. So ownership here implies responsibility and not exclusivity. Okay, so let's say I want to assign this to, Kenneth. Okay, we'll assign it to Kenneth. He'll be the person who'll be responsible for it. I'll click on next. My import source then will be the address book. I'll leave that where it is. I'll click next once again, and this then is where I go in and add my contacts. Now you can see that the entire school population is selected. Of course, they're not all in the drama club. So what I need to do is I need to pare it down to those who are. So in that case, I'll click on the address book button. Click on select subset or individuals. Now you'll recall when we selected the grade 12 students for the graduation ceremony, we selected the entire grade 12 grade, okay? Well, we don't want an entire category, whether it's grade or homeroom or any one of these other categories. What we want to do is we want to select individuals from a cross-section category. So in that case, we'll click on select individuals. You can see our screen changes now. This displays the options, the way they'll be displayed for me, where I can go in and select them. I'll have two columns, name and phone number. It'll be sorted alphabetically by name, although you can see I have other options as well. And it'll be listed and classified by grade. Okay, so I'll go with these settings as they currently exist. I'll click on show results. Okay, you can see the grades appear here now. And if I want to select individual students now, I can expand the grades and go in and select the individual students. So let's go with the first 4 students, for example, in grade 11. I'll select those. I'll collapse grade 11, expand grade 12, select, let's say, the first 4 students there as well. So I have a total of 8 students. I'll click on continue at this point. You can see it shows me that I'm using one address book and I've selected 8 students. When I click on finish, I get a message that basically tells me it's compiling this contact list on the Synervoice server. Whenever you see this white arrow and a green dot on the right side of your screen, use it in place of the back button on the browser. The back button on the browser may take you to a previous operation, whereas clicking on this white arrow will always take you back to the previous page. So let's click there then. You can see there's my drama club. It consists of 8 students. Kenneth is the assigned owner. There's a name of it and the date that it was created. Once again, I have a group of icons that I can click on to make modifications to this contact list. So the first icon, you can see it says Edit Contact List Properties. If I click on it, I get a very simple sort of page. The name of the contact list, I can rename it. If I have a junior and a senior drama club, I can rename this, let's say, to senior. I can assign it to a different owner. Let's say Jordan in this case. We'll assign it to him. We'll click on Save. And you can see those changes have taken place. So Jordan now is the owner. The name is now changed to a senior drama club. Okay, that was the first icon. Next icon, when I hover over it, you can see it says Edit Contact Information. If I click here, you can see these are the kids who are in the drama club. And they're all pulled from the address book, as you can see. So when the address book itself is updated, SchoolConnects will also update the corresponding records in the contact list. So all your contact lists where students are involved will always be as current as the information in the address book itself. Okay. Now let's say Eric here has decided that he doesn't have time for drama. It conflicts with some other activity that he's involved in at the school. He opts for that other activity. So what we need to do then is we need to remove him. We would simply check him off like that. Click on Delete. Click on OK. And you can see Eric's gone. Okay, if we need to replace him at this point, what we can do is we can click on the address book button and select other students. So let's go down to names to start with B. So let's say 3 or 4 students here. Scroll back up to the top, click on Finish. You can see they've been added just that simply. Okay, they're all derived from the address book, okay, and will be automatically updated. Now, let's say I have someone in the community who wants to volunteer with the drama club. What we can do is we can add them manually here. We can click on New, okay, enter their name. Let's say Mr. Brown, okay. We can add a language, email address here, a phone number as well. Click on Save. And you can see Mr. Brown's been added. There's his phone number. You can see that his call status, okay, is not opted in. That phone number has not opted into received SMS text messages. If in fact it did appear in the SMS list, you know, our status would be opted in. Okay, and once he opts in, we'll see that status reflected here. Okay. Now, Mr. Brown, if his phone number changes, it won't be updated automatically like the student records is. You'd have to go in here manually, okay, click on the icon next to his name and make that modification or any other modifications that are required. Okay, so when you use this contact list now to inform parents, let's say of rehearsal times for the drama club, Mr. Brown will get that message as well. Okay, and that's the purpose of creating contact lists. You can create as many as you wish for all the different groups and clubs and so on as you like within the school. And like I said before, you're actually not confined to records pertaining to students. You know, the other thing that you'll probably want to create right off the top is you'll want to create a staff list. Okay, so when you send out a notification message, let's say concerning a school closure, you'll want to create a contact list where staff can be reached as well. So in that case, when you you know, create an announcement informing people that school will be closed for the day, you know, if you're the principal, if you want to have that message go out early in the morning, you'll want to select both the student population from the address book, and you'll want to select a contact list that involves students as well. Okay, and so you can do that in Excel. You can create a staff list in Excel, import it here, and then use it in tandem with the address book. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll look at the next item here, and the simple thing that I can tell you here then is that it doesn't apply to this particular contact list. It says edit import file specification. Now, if we use an external file like an Excel file, okay, to create this contact list, and if we made structural changes to that Excel file, let's say added columns or moved things around, you know, move one column to one side or the other, we would have to recreate the file specification. Okay, we'd have to modify it because you know, SchoolConnects will read it in the old way before the modifications were made. So if you're using an external file, you make modifications to that external file, you'd have to go in and modify the file specification that reads that external file. You click on this icon for the purposes of doing that. Okay. Okay, so let's move on then. That's it for contact lists. A few other items to cover here. The do not call list. You know, let's say you have...
Can I just quickly jump in there? I know a few people are just letting me know that they're going to have to go, and we'll be sure to send out all the resources. And I just want to touch base on this quickly before everyone goes. I know the questions come up a little bit about transition time, and I'm just about to send an email. So the schools that are in this first wave, we just wanted to get you up and running because we know that our Center Voice is our old system that's kind of become an end of life, is being real spotty with attendance calls. So this system's ready to go right away whenever you're ready. But what we've shared with the schools yesterday as well is take your time, feel free to play around. We'll continue to use the system on this end as best we can to send those calls out. And then basically once you're ready to try to actually do your own attendance calls out, we'll just remove you from the Center Voice system on this end so it doesn't double up the calls. But as far as timeline goes, you definitely have time to play around. We're not going to bring on the other 30-something schools until later in November. So just take your time, play around. We know there's stuff to learn, but hopefully the system will be able to kind of be a one-stop shop for you so it can send emails, your calls, and all those different things so you're not doing that on 3 or 4 different platforms.
Yeah, good thought. You don't want multiple messages going out from multiple sources. Okay, so we're going to look at the do not call list now, and the do not call list is basically what it says, but it's a bit of a misnomer. It should be do not notify because it affects emails as well. So if I click on new here, I can block messages, okay, email and calls for attendance messages only, announcements and emergency messages only, or all messages. So those are my message options there. My blockage options are that I can block calls to specified phone number. You can see that the phone number field appears here. I could then enter the phone number that I wish to block messages to. I can also block calls and emails for the specified student ID. You can see when I choose this option, my field name changes from phone number to ID, and I would enter the student ID in this case. Finally, you can block calls and emails for the specified student ID. You block emails for a specified student ID and calls to specified phone number for this ID. This is the important part here, for this ID. So if you have both fields here, you would enter the student ID, you would enter the phone number, and what will happen is calls will be blocked at this phone number only for the student ID. This works very well if you have students who are 18 years old or older. They can come to the office, they can make a request that you don't send messages home on their behalf. As an adult, you're entitled to make that request. You're obliged to fulfill it. So what you can do is you can go in here, you can enter their student ID, enter the phone number with these two fields, and what will happen is calls to this phone number will be blocked on behalf of this student. But if there are younger siblings in the home that you're still obliged to send messages home for, those messages will go through. The blockage at this phone number with this third option applies only to the student ID. Finally, the comment field. It's a good idea to document the occasion upon which you're entering a do not call record. You could have one parent that makes a request, a week or two later, you might get the other parent calling, wondering or complaining why they're not receiving messages. Well, if you go here, if you look it up, you can explain to them that their spouse made the request on such and such a date, and they can take it up between themselves at that point. Anytime you save a record in the do not call list, it remains in SchoolConnects in perpetuity, forever and ever, until such time as it's removed. Now, potentially that could pose a problem. You could have a situation where you've entered a phone number on the do not call list from a family that then moves out of district. Their phone number gets reassigned to an incoming family. That family's not getting calls. Well, potentially they could be on the do not call list, or there's all kinds of other reasons why they're not getting calls. So you can do then, okay, is you can go in. I'm just going to move on to the do not call record here. You could go into one of the other items under Manage Contacts and troubleshoot that situation where someone's not getting calls. So to do that, you would click on, where are we here? Search the address book or lists right there, okay? And you can enter, let's say, the phone number here. Now, one of three possibilities will occur if someone is not getting calls and they ought to be getting calls. You can enter the phone number here, and one of three possibilities will occur. Either the phone number will not appear, you won't get any kind of hit when you do a search. That's one possibility, which means it hasn't been entered in My EdBC in the first place. Second possibility is that they're on the do not call list, okay, and they need to be removed from that list. Third possibility, okay, the remotest possibility is that they have a zapper device connected to their phone line, and you need to toggle that particular option in the student record from no to yes so that you can circumvent the operation of the zapper device. In any event, if you enter any one of the criteria here, okay, the entire SchoolConnects database will be searched. Both divisions of the address book, the student household division, all the contacts in the address book associated with students, that second division will be searched in its entirety as well. All the contact lists will also be searched, and the do not call list. Anything that corresponds to any one of the criteria that you've entered here will be produced on the screen, okay? Okay, yeah, that's it for the search, okay? And what else do we have here? Basically, that's it. We've covered all the options that you'll be dealing with on your screen, okay? A couple other items to cover. If we go over to reports, we have three items here. The custom report and message activity summary. These two are beyond the scope of today's training session. You can always learn more about these by looking at our master manual where they're covered in detail. What I do want to alert you to, and could be very important for you, is the message history report. If we click here, let's say you have a situation where a parent calls to report that they haven't received any attendance calls from the beginning of the school year, and they perfectly well expected to. You know, they know that the kid was absent a few times, and they're wondering why they haven't received those calls. Well, you'd leave it on attendance in that case for the message type, although you can see we have other options as well. So let's leave it on attendance. It's for Okanagan Mission Secondary. You can enter the student ID, the student name, the phone number, email address, any one of these criteria. Your start date then would be from the beginning of the school year. That's what they're reporting. So what you can do is click on the date field here, take it right back to September 1st. From September 1st to the current date, that will be your date range. You can get a call history, you can get an email history, SMS history, any combination of these. It's the call history that we want. We have our phone number at this point. It'll be for attendance calls. When I click on Get History, SchoolConnects will produce a comprehensive report of all calls, attendance calls that went to that particular phone number from the beginning of the school year to the current date. So if you have a situation where a kid is getting home before the parents, deleting attendance messages, well, that kid's now been found out, okay? And you can take the appropriate measures to correct the situation. You know, maybe a few detentions or whatever you deem, worthy of a response. The one thing that you can do at this point then is you can go into the student record and assign a PIN code to the account. So when the calls go through, SchoolConnects will prompt for a PIN code, which the parent, of course, will know. The PIN code can then be entered by the parent. They alone then will get that call. And that way you'll circumvent the sabotage of the student. Okay. Lastly, if you go to need help, okay, we have frequently asked questions. If you go in here, we have 10 basic questions that are useful to new users. So, you know, how do I get that report that we were looking at earlier?
Hey, Bronco. Yep. I apologize. I got to jump in here. I actually have to run to my next meeting, but I just want to let everyone know I just sent them an email with some follow-up resources and just asked anyone to feel free to reach out if they have any questions. And like I said, just know that take your time in learning the system and please reach out if you have questions. But I just want to thank you for your time today.
Okay, great. Thanks, Jordan. Okay, we'll finish off fairly shortly, and just to let everyone know that I'll be sending some information to Jordan concerning the recording and how you can actually retrieve that recording. It'll be in a Dropbox that you'll have access to, and Jordan can then forward that information to you. Okay, so we're looking at the frequently asked questions. You know, if you want to know how to get that report I mentioned, you know, you can click here, and there's some basic other questions that you can click on here. Next, we have user manuals. If you click here, okay, we have 3 items. The stock messages that we talked about. If you want to know what the stock messages are, how they operate, how to access them, this will be the document that you'll be looking at. You know, what's new in this release? This is self-evident. What I do want to alert you to is the SchoolConnects web user guide. So if you click here, this is the master manual. You can see it's 327 pages long. It covers everything pertaining to SchoolConnects. So if you go down to the table of contents, just like the basic training guide, it's completely hyperlinked. You know, so if you want to know about something, let's say you want to know about contact lists, okay, you can see there's the item. If you click on it, it'll take you directly to that page, and now you can read about contact lists, okay? The entire document is hyperlinked in this fashion, okay? You can download it. It's a good idea to download it, and that way, you know, you won't be opening it up and using up internet resources at the school on an ongoing basis. Okay, so I'll just close that then. Next, we have remote support portal. If we need to connect to your computers for whatever reason, we'll direct you to this page, the Supervised Remote Support Portal page, and we'll ask you to click on one of these options. It'll allow us to connect to your computers. We can do troubleshooting, maybe a mini training session, or some additional setup, and you know, we'll guide you through the process of actually connecting. Okay. And then finally, if you need to contact us, you can see we have a contact us page here. Okay, there's our mailing address. We're just north of Toronto in a place called Markham. We have emergency support 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Anytime you call, we can provide you with whatever help you need. Non-emergency support times are between 8 a.m. and 6 p.m., which would be 5 a.m. to 3 p.m. BC time. That's when our tech support department is fully staffed, and we can help you best throughout those times. If you call this 800 number, press 1. It'll put you through to support, and we can then process your call to a technician. You can also use this email address for that purpose as well. Okay, so I'm showing only one party still connected, for Allison Glutek. I thank you for your patience and remaining connected. And I'll ask you if you have any questions, you can unmute your mic and I'll be happy to answer it or them. Okay, apparently not. So what we'll do is we'll just end the session at this point. And like I said, I'll have a recording ready. Okay, and it'll become available to you from Jordan shortly. Okay, so thanks for hanging in there, Allison, and good luck using the system. And I'll just remind you that anytime you have any questions, by all means, give us a call, and we'll be glad to help you. So have a pleasant day then, and we'll be in touch. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.